The student anti-militarism movement is back and growing. The colleges are cracking down. Ending the crackdown is key to the survival of the movement. SW5. Administration cracking down to actions to stand up against military recruiters, peer systems, where police repression with enlistment, slumping military officials, I guess 55 recruits that coming year will goals will be even more difficult. The anti-war movement among students promises to direct barriers to fill the ranks of the movement is not for the minority to the majority, but we are against all administrations that don't want to lose control. They may be facing pressure from the army, telling administrations that need to guarantee success. It's amazing how quickly schools deal with protesters. The student anti-war movement is growing in an attempt to stifle anti-war movement. The militarized state has cracked down on resistance to militarism. Free speech zones criminalize and marginalize political protests into media spectacles incapable of effectuating change. Policing tactics reinforce the violent logic of preemption that underlies all global violence. Elmer 8. After the protests against the WTO agencies begin to rethink their responses to resistance through sort of political response at the core of this political strategy that contains dissent against protesters' agencies by 1, overwhelming numbers of officers, 2, preemptive threats, and 3, surveillance. Such strategies marginalize dissent. Detainments are used to preemptively remove protesters. With the separation of protesters, political marginalization has become a possibility. Protests lose their publicity, becoming marginalized spectacles. Distance from government. Protests become neutered substitutions for chaotic confrontations. Streets are cordoned off to become staged for the protests, and by controlling the debate without acknowledging that the protesters are restrained. But outside of this political stage, in colleges are the missing link in expanding the counter-movement to militarism. Campus anti-war activism has failed to materialize, but it is necessary to support broader global movements and turn the tide against the culture of U.S. militarism. Harding and Kirshner 11. Counter-recruitment starts with recruiting allies. It's aimed at CR is aimed at countering the U.S. culture promotes violence. Anti-militarism is a way to keep the movement viable for long-term counter-recruitment. Resist the culture of militarism. Survival depends on passive examples of military violence to be measured by small struggles. The time to turn the tide is now, with Pentagon spending at record levels. Afghanistan is in its 10th year and operations expanding. Yemen and Pakistan, the stakes could not be higher. Colleges more than incubators of military values. Scholars must examine militarism. Nearly 150 groups engage in demilitarization. International efforts underscore the American military is uniquely dependent upon the school. Military and forces from NATO being called on to support U.S. foreign policy goals. To suggest an opportunity to collaborate with European movements. Regional networks will assume a greater role. We know Micronesian counter-recruiters that grew out of the conference in Guam, promoting dialogue of the potential little network in other countries. Such efforts bolster global defenses against militarism at the time of global war, and it's try or die for the global resistance. A brutal eruption of warfare and fascist violence will soon engulf the globe, but the conditions are right for an equally powerful opposition movement to prevent global catastrophe. Socialist Equality Party 16. The drive to establish new world has created global disorder, fascistic unending wars, countries have devastated, million killed, fascistic tendency, and collapse are preparing direct military confrontation with its rivals. Army chief declared that war is almost guaranteed. The Atlantic Council urged cooperation to fight major and other wars between Russia, China, and telling pilots the death of nuclear exchange against our world has become a tinderbox. The U.S. is at the forefront of this eruption of militarism and new world wars, and that role without the intervention of the working class. Among the youth, there exists a desire for peace. The building of the anti-war movement requires the understanding of the crisis. The burden of militarism will be borne by the working class. The government increased spending for the first time. The conditions for a struggle are emerging. The same crises that drew austerity and military force creating conditions for an interruption of struggle. This global opposition to imperialist war, the new anti-war movement must be international, mobilizing in a global struggle against imperialism. The permanent war must be answered with permanent revolution. And independently, militarism requires dissent to be suppressed in colleges and universities to be criminalized as part and parcel of the state's dissemination of militarization of education society at large. Grodrich 14. Linkages between public education, militarization, criminalization of dissent, demonstration of the university embedded in military interests. The university includes a militarizing form strategy coupled with the political rhetoric that criminalizes specific behaviors of all the protests against the strategy. Militarization necessary to convey the dissent against privatization and be costly and inflicting violence upon those who dissent. The strategy through militarization rests on de-incentivizing public protests to assume that dissenters will choose rationally to cease struggling with the logic of neoliberal privatization requires that dissent continue. And I advocate that public colleges and universities ought not to restrict any constitutionally protected free speech. Contention 2 is Solvency 1. Student protests on campus specifically allows for the instigation of dissent and questioning of the military-industrial conflict within the departments of the university that fueled the war. Vietnam War proves Tilly 99. Protests against American involvement in Vietnam was led by students. Student protests were directed against universities who received information facilitating the war against Vietnam students. Targeted military recruitment programs reached laboratories that was used by troops in Vietnam. The question of authority placed scientists directly in the line of fire. It's impossible that universities ignored these protests, yet that's not how the story unfolded. Anti-war activism is alive and larger than ever. Social media technologies and movement miscibility allow the movement to gain wider audiences and challenge use militarism broadly. Now is the key time for the movement to flourish. Voxio 6. Mobilization against war has been one of the most visible forms of collective act demonstration and brought hundreds of thousands to the streets. These protests express growing dissatisfaction with war. The peace movement has waxed and waned. Students will represent a turning point. They appeared before the end of the armed conflict after a constant decline of the peace movement, despite the fact that political opportunity was unfavorable. Social movement organization and the mightier public to adherence. Movements grow faster when they're able to recruit new members using social networks. Political opportunity structures that could stabilize mobilization by gaining legitimacy. The anti-war approach can be better understood by employing miscible movements. This conceptualization has a number of advantages. Social movements are fluid events of miscible mobilization go beyond involved social construction process, education, and socializing. mobilization of troops by external events that can stimulate coalitions to prepare by the new war on terrorism, creating grievances for movements compatible with ideologies and citizens fear that the war could contribute to our circle of violence society, mobilizing information technologies as the internet offer resources for rapid mobilization of peace movements communities are shared to activists from other movements. The threat of conflict created a bellwether issue representing the activists who use an urge to probably unifies groups with similar concerns with the anti-war mobilization increased significantly 1 year later. Mobilization registered similar numbers from the Vietnam Wars. Contention 3 is framing. 1. Militarism through war structures all inequalities, not the other way around. Organ 12. No conditioning can inoculate society against militarism, war, counterpart, capitalism, imperialism, gender, and aggression are the other single cost of wars. Fueled and sustained these other injustice. Once we have escaped from the shadow war, behind war, research, over to other problems like economic justice, for health, environmental destruction, war, exacerbates, and peace is the way to solve problems. Those who want to make the world a better place should make abolishing wars a priority. If you want justice, work for peace. And debate about arcane legal details crucial to short-term survival of oppressed populations. Articles at L10. Legal work is critical to the movements for social justice. Movements recognize limitations of the legal system and liberties that advantage to the oppressed by using our knowledge and expertise to help disenfranchised communities take leadership, take on supreme significance, and knowledge to take some supreme significance in court politics, rights, to the lawyers, the opportunity to expose the working decisions so that they can bring our voice back to communities and take leadership. Yeah. I read everything. Yep.
The Horgan evidence indicates that militarism controls all other kinds of inequalities. Why is that?
Right, so the Horgan evidence indicates that in times of war, we sort of have to manage the ways in which we divert resources to deal with certain sort of conflicts, right?
Okay. The line from the card that I'd like to isolate says, those of us who want to make the world a better place should make abolishing war our priority. How does the app abolish war?
I don't necessarily think that the app has a stance on abolishing war. I think it's consistent with the
that is what is required.
Right, but I think that a way to abolish war is to sort of demilitarize the domestic space, which is something that the affirmative does. Right?
What is militarism?
Militarism is the promulgation of militaristic values within the domestic space.
Where does it come from?
I don't know. I guess our uniqueness evidence indicates that it comes from the United States foreign apparatus. Like, there's no root causal claim made in the 1AC.
Well, the Horgan evidence seems to indicate that it is quite literally like physical wars that cause the issues of militarism.
Well, I mean, not particularly, right? It says that war has fueled and sustained conflicts. It doesn't make a claim about like why militarism exists in the first place, right? I think that the only claim that the Horgan evidence can like substantially make is just the way that things like war sort of exacerbate our ability to deal with other sorts of conflicts.
Okay.
Where the thesis of the card comes from.
What exact crackdowns have there been on anti-war movements?
I think our Elmer evidence offers a pretty fantastic question. I think it talks.
I just asked a question. I want an answer.
Yeah.
What
I mean,
are the specific anti-war movements?
Okay, so one is the CR, which is the counter-recruitment method. Literally, it's a movement that's focused on disincentivizing people from enrolling in the army. I think the SW evidence does a pretty fantastic job of explaining why
What are the crackdowns? Your evidence is like it's growing in the SWO.
Yeah, so the Elmer evidence indicates that it gives the example of like WTO protests, right? So back in like sometime in the 90s, there was these WTO protests, and what essentially the police apparatus did is that they cordoned off the streets that led to those meetings, and they essentially isolated these protests in a space that's far away from where their demands should be.
What about that is a restriction of their First Amendment rights?
I would argue that it's consistent with principle. It's consistent with the logic of confining dissent to certain spaces. Right.
That's fair, but my question is, what about blocking off streets is inconsistent with First Amendment rights?
Is inconsistent with the First Amendment rights. I would argue that it hampers your ability. Well, I don't know if the 1AC makes a claim to First Amendment rights, but I would argue that it hampers the ability
not to restrict any protected speech. Whose speech is being restricted because they're being like blocked off?
I mean, under the advocacy of the 1AC, I would feel that anyone who is like a university student or anyone who participates within the university structure,
I'm asking you, what rules or regulations have people been enforced that says you cannot say these things?
I mean, like free speech zones are a pretty fantastic example, right? It's literally like, that's a pretty good example of how on universities people have confined their ability to dissent to certain specific areas.
Why is dissent not effective in those certain specific areas?
Well, it's because the way in which, so think about it this way, right? If you give the university the ability to sort of squash and only let people protest in certain areas, it's much more manageable, right? And that is where the thesis of the 1AC comes from.
talks public universities and colleges should either create policies or reform their current policies on sexual harassment and so choose set strict harassment guidelines for in-classroom behavior for teachers to prohibit speech. They agree to hostile learning environment. They should also implement guidelines prohibiting student content that agree to hostile learning environment due to the sexual nature of speech. These regulations will be enforced consistent with Title 9 and 7 of the Civil Rights Act, down or 12. Harassment is conduct of sexual engagement with the social spirit of pervasive of both the from the design and the perspective of recipients screen hostile environmental closer and you can prohibit from sexual nature the social view of objective from representative recipients to create a hostile environment. The counterplan solves a barrier within harassment law right now. Oppression features against president of the First Amendment. The counterplan shows the president to take a stance against harassment. Marcus 08, the puzzled and eager to access the higher education First Amendment. Our argument in harassment and free speech arguments become a favorite topic for the minister First Amendment argues ill for any area of regulation which are brought to within its shifting boundaries. Free speech claims are now regularly raised in response to various allegations of harassment of efforts to apply First Amendment doctrines. Harassment are ultimately unresolvable on the basis of constitutional doctrine alone. Dissent. Harassment cases persist because of lack of clarity and requirements. A commitment to accountability is key. Saha 822. University campuses are vulnerable to sexual harassment of various types. The most common reason for not reporting is that it was considered serious enough that it is not thinking will be done about it. Even if the sexual assault is not taking place, a person taking serious harassment. A hostile negative space count as sex harassment. We need to come up with a regulation looking to harassment suffered in successful lawsuits for school accountability to fight harassment. Syllaba 15. Title 9 is as a for capacity to address sexual assault because of colleges and compelled to take steps to reduce assault. Title 9 apply pressure institutions offer equity programming. The best regarded as the statutes focus on essential energy and require schools to deliver evidence-based bullying prevention or reduce bullying within school. The DOE is investigating the schools and schools attempt to evaluate their process. The next step is the DOE caps on prevention measures, and the app causes a snowball effect that makes First Amendment defenses impossible to beat. Shower 04. First Amendment matches ensures limits on harassment isolation role of the litigants and actors receive virtues of opportunity strategies with proliferation First Amendment surrounding the computer source code and copyright municipality things to reproduce a cascade of pressure scarcely possible. Things to make the plausible claims that seem incredibly multiplicity of possible claims given the attraction and sexual harassment in the classroom is a result of patriarchal violence that invades academia. Sexual harassment represents an oppressive use of power by professors and their because of participation and success of the harassed. Benson and Thompson. So widespread authority relationship, sexual interest, and gender stratification define sexual harassment. There is a nexus of power with formal authority men engaged in interpersonal sexual behaviors that will be rebuffed. Their relationship would not be superior to subordinate students are supposedly evaluated according to the teachable performance, a wild attitude to bring the interaction of helpfulness. Our analysis of sexual harassment is nexus of power applies that male instructors are manipulating interest in authority which undermine women, and we need to challenge human masculinity facing everyday spaces we occupy. Challenging harassment is key. Copper and 10. Exploitation of a continuum of violence and connections of war and violence in everyday culture. This violent culture is profoundly gendered. Mindsets, expectations, behaviors, and attitudes are fed. The gender culture violence in everyday life being about widespread acceptance of war. Gender relations must be recognized as a casual war. Gender relations ready to use all methods of violence transformed to each of the gender relations must be coordinated for peace to prevent militarism. For the dominant culture, the movement has to allow a critique of gender to transform a peace movement. A peace movement against war could be a counter-hegemonic movement for non-violent, and diversity outweighs in terms of the case Chango 2. Diversity initiatives are our efforts to change and challenge the transformation of practices, making education more equitable, inclusive, for alternative perceptions. The educational benefit are associated with diversity, emergence of institutional transformation for a challenge for changes. They challenge the prevailing educational sensibilities. Enhance educational participation. Educational significance of diversity must be observed when viewed as a change for self-correction. Diversity calls for any question on learning is viewed and how learning should be assessed. Next up, counterplan text. The United States federal government should abolish the entirety of the armed forces. Edmonds 04. We don't know the military, anything the military has only executed the adventurous forms of individual accomplishment or presidents do so they have been muscle behind the needlessly making the rest of the world hate us. Compelling reason we should abolish all government military forces now. A standing military threat to our liberty has been approved in the U.S. The military must be abolished. Solves 100% of the case there. Hogner evidence in the first one of the framework indicates that the reason that our militarism causes the kinds of inequalities that starts from a structure of war wherein across like explicitly says we divert resources and things, which means getting rid of the military explicitly solves all of your claims case. The overview of the case is that movements are happening now, which means you need to win a very high threshold. This is why we should allow the app. The only reason the app says, the cross-check says why we should allow the app is because right now they're being sectioned off. That is not any sort of a block on free speech, and the app would not be able to stop that because they only stop people from having soft speech restrictions. But the app needs to win a very high bar. Two, things like news spiller from campuses means that protests that happen now, even if they're only specific speech zones, are sufficient to solve because people hear about them. You read evidence about how they're expanding and growing and doing great. It means that that no one is stifling their speech, only putting them in certain zones. There's no reason why those individuals can't speak. Crossing says it's due to management. What kind of management is happening? That you read explicit evidence that they're expanding in the status quo means that is nonsense. Next, the act legitimates dominant viewpoints and changes no one's minds. Inquiry 84, the marketplace that is functions self-fulfilling prophecy because the perspective of dominant groups. I think a rational top the marketplace provides a model of dominant groups of self-suffering so dominant perspectives to justify these dissidents or busy structured pressures and actions but as you go the market's failures consequently there neither holds dominant views nor does it feel the pressure to alter their views and elective market outcomes and legitimates the government and destroys radical action. Inquiry 84, the acceptance of myth and manipulation on the neutral marketplace by just legitimacy or government that is essential to across both the channels for development and all other perspectives manipulation due to doctrination socialization first amendment furthers both perceptions as long as a system bias in favor of the established groups are dominated by perspective remains all of the system retains a legitimacy and the marketplace of freedom. The idea that we can speak out is already socialized against dissent, which means no one cares about your protests anyway. Stanley or Ingber 84, the public has focused on dissenting messages packaging elements of content because of dissenting unconventional method of communication while hostility creating unconventional preservation content of the difficulty audiences understanding the message orthodox position or perspective individuals the increase their acceptability distance must overcome the socialization marketplace is skewed to one status quo views of greater opportunity and no major changes come from the marketplace. The tiny victories they point to like the Vietnam War examples the government knowing that a movement is so ineffective they don't need to take action to stop it. The Vietnam War was not stopped because of student protests. It was just deeply bad for the American economy and we're all fighting massive war overseas. Inquiry 84. Government officials must be turned to the marketplace for them because they presume will be normally American National Party of Boston, the Marshall through Skokie, the Jewish community question why is the residents of all the National Party fuel, whatever if you're working in the marketplace and not function to reconsideration, the Nazi suppression is not precisely because officials ain't because the market will reject it and the government fails. Officials will receive Nazi Martez threatening and influencing decisions they might they might well have forbidden the march and all of their arguments are assume things like the Vietnam War applied today. Obviously, there's a very different culture as to what people care about. Militarism is far more entrenched in our society. I.e., people are afraid of like Muslim people every day. The Vietnam War was like a war overseas.
Okay, before I start, the only thing you didn't read is the Chandler evidence, right?
Correct.
Awesome. You good? Alright, so let's talk about the first card that you read on case, the marketplace of ideas. What exactly is that and why is the affirmative an example of that?
The marketplace of ideas is just like a buzzword for saying the idea of being able to share different viewpoints in universities. The argument in the first card is that when things are discussed in the marketplace of ideas, the belief that the sort of dominant logic is so dominant that nothing is changed.
So
people's minds are changed by.
So what exactly constrains certain people from expressing their opinions in the marketplace of ideas?
Well, I mean,
because it seems to me that like.
Well, I'm not sure what the question is.
Right. So the Ingber evidence seems to presume that certain people can't express their positions.
No,
that's why we
don't.
Okay.
The argument is not that people can't talk or can't put their ideas in the market. Read a line from the card. Because the perspectives that are dominant groups think best are adopted, the marketplace model provides a dominant group with a basis for its self-serving belief that dominance of its perspectives is justified.
Cool. So
the argument is you encourage protests that say, look, everyone, we should fight militarism. In reality, the military-industrial complex just says, those dudes are idiots, don't listen to them, they make fools of themselves, and everyone takes them less seriously.
Okay, cool. So, fine, let's go to the second counterpoint that you read, abolishing the entirety of the armed forces. Okay, why exactly is that necessary to resist the sort of way that militarism has been? How does that solve the offense of the app that stems off the fact that military values have been normalized within society?
Your offense is quite literally the Hogner evidence.
Okay, right? I mean, Hogner literally just says that, Horgan literally just says that.
Horgan, my bad.
Yeah, it literally just says that militarism and things like war structure other impacts. My question is that seems to address the way that militarism resolves itself in society, not the way that it sort of is normalized within our mindset. So my question is, why does it counterpoint solve any of the case on this?
So, number one, the Horgan card says pretty explicitly, those of us who want to make the world a better place, more democratic, equitable, healthier, cleaner, should make abolishing the invention of war our priority, because peace can help bring about many other changes we seek. I think that's pretty clear as to why the abolishing of war, of the ability to go to war,
I understand
impacts.
Right?
You can be like, oh, our Horgan card is wrong, we actually didn't read it, or like something like that. But in reality, it pretty explicitly says that the reason these things happen is because of like a top-down question.
It's a top-down question. Okay, my question is that I don't necessarily see any piece of evidence, the one I see that seems to indicate that. So why exactly is the one I see?
I literally just read you a line from yours. What are you talking about?
All right, never mind then. Okay, let's go to the first counterpoint. This is public university and colleges should create policies from their current policies on sexual harassment. What exactly is Title IX?
Title IX is a part of the Civil Rights Act that says sexual harassment in sort of educational settings should
Okay, so why exactly is that mutually exclusive with the advocacy of the affirmative?
You say, make all speech cool.
Okay.
You say, no.
Wait, all speech cool. What about, is it like not constitutionally protected?
Our argument in the counterplan, the second piece of evidence that is read,
Okay.
is that there is massive amounts of sort of like controversy, and right now, because of the way in which is sort of like precedent has shifted, it is currently not protected, or it is
Okay.
protected under the First Amendment.
Okay. Okay, tough prep. I have myself at 2 minutes left. Save this speech on hanging out right now. Okay. So the order is going to go case with an overview on top. It's going to go to the first counterplan, the dissent, and then the second counterplan. So basically the opposite in the order that they were read. Okay. Is that already good? Okay.
Yeah.
Alright, for sure. Overview to the cases, they try or die for the affirmative. A massive outburst of great power warfare that terminates in nuclear conflict is coming within the next few years as the U.S. seeks to shore up against its hegemon status. That's the SW evidence. A massive counter movement is now underway. It's bigger than the Vietnam protest. That's the Vasi evidence. The student movement is the vital missing link. Students are the most active and use social media to expand movement to the point where it can create critical mass around the globe to stop militarism strikes. At the Harding and Kirshner evidence, the universities are cracking down to destroy the counter movement and destroy the global resistance. That's the Elmer evidence. The plan protects the student movement, allowing us to stop this with the military organization. Now let's go to the line group. Their first three arguments is literally answered by every single piece of uniqueness evidence we read in the White City. Elmer evidence is fantastic on this question. It literally takes us back to the point in which the state colonel has legal restrictions to squash dissent on campus. Now the warrant in this is inherently true because of the point in which you confine, the point in which you sort of confine these spaces of dissent to certain areas within the university, like free speech zones. It's the reason as to why the dissent movement loses potential to actually go global, and that is the thesis of our uniqueness evidence. Next, group of 3 and 4 arguments. This literally presumes the ability to engage in the first place, which is the question of weighing. The comparative analysis here is that do you think that the ability to engage in these marketplace of ideas is more important in the first place? And the answer is Yes, because these sorts of abilities for us to deliberate radical thought preconceive their notion of adhering to dominant viewpoints in the first place, which is the reason as to why it is probably more important for us to be able to engage in the first place. Now, finally, group their 5 and 6 arguments is literally the thesis of the affirmative explains why these disciplining tactics are necessarily true. Call for the Elmer evidence and answers back these 2 arguments. It gives an empirical example of how WTO protests in the first place were literally cordoned off. The disciplinary apparatus, i.e. the law, sort of used to disempower the radical movement by cordoning it off away from the areas where it really mattered. And the way that we can contextualize the crossing is a pretty fantastic example of the free speech. So it's a question of you confining dissent in crossing, which means that the case cards are not particularly responsive. Now let's go to the first current plan. Permutation do both. There's 2 warrants. Or A, step 1 is that the First Amendment in university context did not protect speech that creates hostile environments in violation of Title 6 of McClellan 15. Supreme Court gets permit schools to restrict speech that would interrupt class to interfere with the opportunity of others to obtain education. Tinker v. Des Moines and Healy versus James. When harassment rises to a level of severity that qualifies for Title 7 minority students have by definition prevented access to educational programs. Schools are justified in intervening. In the second war and the net by first permutation that the hate speech codes of the counterplan can be formulated consistent with the First Amendment. All your offense can be solved by the permutation 6 is 10. Speech codes can be the result of Supreme Court jurisprudence efficiency conform to the policy compatible with Virginia v. Black appreciability of the overlook to the fourth section is saying should not punish intimidating message, do not interfere with free speech, can prohibit threatening symbolism, can punish by suspension, disenrollment, and withdrawal. Now, let's go to the dissonance. First, multiple arguments here. One is that multiple Supreme Court cases have held the constitutionality of the Title IX restrictions in education means that the affirmative does not protect that type of speech. That's a pretty damning no-link argument. Title IX Info 16. Supreme Court Choice Board versus Ed versus Bell. Teacher filed a complaint of sexual discrimination when she was not rehired after pregnancy. The U.S. Supreme Court upheld the Title IX regulations that prohibited sex discrimination. Grove City v. College will the Title not prohibit sex discrimination and any other education program or activity that receives federal funds. In this case, U.S. Supreme Court held that the Title the student financial was only part of the college covered by Title IX. Davis moved down Connery Board of Education. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the school is liable under Title IX for student harassment, depressing harass student of access to educational opportunities. The Supreme Court support for Title IX past rulings established that its constitutional additional warrant McCarthy on 16. The Supreme Court's most influential role has been through the exercise of judicial review. The court's power to declare acts unconstitutional and enable Supreme Court justice to direct policy makers through issues and consider them prompting Congress to pass under quality like the legislative Supreme Court regarding interpretation of the Constitution. In turn, hate speech codes created rules of solvency that hurt intellectual movements on campus. Bellicosa 93. Schools went to the feds and need some sort of draws of their transgression society. Some to expect quick short-term fixes. Today, most people experience forced societal and people's naturally out of warrior seek the solution proportionate to big problems. Hate speech requires time reflecting people that do not emerge from the street with the hip knee-jerk fixes. In turn, hate speech catalyzes action in the government power to regulate speech, always any form of negative offense, but go in and Tangri 91. If anything, one might expect use of invective errors to social minorities to redress from political leaders. At some point, the government must be able to say we know the truth is not prohibited. False speech results in empowering the government to actually justify rejecting the government restriction. Next on the final counterplans. Counterplan is terrible. One is not mutually exclusive with the affirmative because the advocacy text can affirm specific universities. But 2, also, this only competitive argument for the Horgan evidence literally has the reverse causality wrong. It's a question of diversionary or effects or ability to affect other resources. Because the permutation is 100% true. The only evidence I didn't read, I didn't read Girardi, and I didn't read Baker. I'll send an updated speech document prep.
It's fine. You can just delete the 2 pieces of evidence.
On your computer?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like, I did it. It was like 2 in a row I did.
Alright.
We're
I'll
getting
share.
then the first counterplan is that.
Case on line by line.
Case with an overview where you can flow like on the first argument in the line C.
Okay, I got you.
Then first counterplan is that. Ready? Yep, you good?
The 1 AR overview is not sufficient to get case solvency. I told you to hold a very high bar to 1 AR extensions of solvency. We have protests now. There's nothing that is specifically restricting them from actually protesting. You can see that the new spillover means everyone gets to see these protests. There's no reason students are the crucial internal link. There's no warrant for that. The overview he read explicitly just says students are the internal link. There's absolutely no warrant, which means that as long as we have new spillover, then everyone can see that they're A point. Obviously, students would see that as well. B point, everyone else would see. Means there's no reason students are key, which means any risk of a turn is sufficient to resolve the trial die argument. Moreover, the second counterplan resolves trial die. Yes, it's not competitive. It's advantage counterplan. It just proves that there's no trial die. Your trial die argument is about nuclear conflict. We don't have a military in the world of the negative, which means there's no nuclear conflict. You don't have a trial die claim. It is simply a question of sort of like maybe general cultural militarism, but we will win turns, which means you lose the debate. The first argument you make is this Elmer Cross application that legal restrictions are bad. Argument is that all of these that even if we get rid of those legal restrictions, none of the will be useful. The first Inger evidence indicates that the dominant sort of narrative within colleges will always win out. That whenever people come and say, the military is terrible, people say, but they're protecting us, but we love them, but they're heroes, and automatically ignore everything we have to say, which means you don't get access to any of your solvency. This is terminal defense to your movement offense, that they're simply not effective. Absolutely no one cares. The second Inger evidence says that your protests kill radical action because they're not effective, but even if they are, they're only linguistically effective. We did not get rid of the military. People have been protesting the Iraq War since it started, and it is yet to end. Our argument is that all of these things get those students to say, well, I protested, I did something, we got it and killed any sort of larger radical action, or even people who would take larger action. For example, trying to push for policy would never do that because they believe they could just protest. The next Inger evidence indicates that there's sort of a socialization claim that people are socialized against the method by which dissent. People see protests and think, man, they're just organized. Look at Occupy. They didn't know what they're talking about. They're all dirty. They have no idea. They're all like college students. All of these things are reasons why people, the evidence explicitly says they only care about the packaging of the message, not the actual message, which means protests and other things that are sort of apps are like different than the status quo always get ignored because they're just seen as silly. The last thing your evidence says that no major changes come as a result. You say the app is bigger than the Vietnam protest. At worst, that just means you say the protests now are bigger than the Vietnam protest. At worst, that just means the app doesn't have to do anything because they're already super massive. Or the other argument, or the other side of the double bind is that Inger is true, which point the Vietnam protest didn't do anything. We got out of Vietnam for a litany of like economic reasons and ignored all the protests. I think you should default on the second because it is a conceded war in the Inger evidence that says that the marketplace doesn't, the sort of free speech or the way in which these sort of melange of ideas works is that no one cares about major changes because it is only the government allowing a certain amount of speech. The framing issue that should be extended here through the 2AR is that even if it is true that all of these protests are super effective and everything is great, the government is able to still control them through things like sectioning them off, which isn't a restriction to free speech. The 1AC cannot stop them from being pushed into a corner. It can only stop them from speech restrictions, which means that which pretty much is the name graphics, which you don't get any solvency. The Elmer Cross application is that a WTO is corded off. That is exactly our argument. This doesn't take it out. The last argument to make is this presumes the ability to engage. That doesn't make any sense. Our argument is that when we engage, when we attempt to put our ideas out there, they're never effective and instead lead to worse things.
Counterplay.
There's no net benefit of the counterplan. All of the turns are all disadds to the permutation. Also, the second counterplan proves that there's no clear net benefit. The Horgan evidence indicates that there's sort of that there's a top-down approach. You say, but like cultural militarism. Your Horgan evidence says that cultural militarism comes from war itself, from physical actual war, which means there's no net benefit to the permutation. The first evidence you read is about Title VII. Our counterplan has nothing to do with that. Don't evaluate it. The second evidence say hate speech codes can be established later on, but that doesn't mean they will be. The military could also get up and stop working, and the military militarism could halt itself, but you have to read specific evidence as to how it will happen. Otherwise, this doesn't justify a permutation or anything else. The counterplan, the second evidence, the counterplan proves all of the arguments on the dissad are not true. All these sort of no links, because it is far more recent than all of these court cases that your card studying. Explicitly says that in the last couple of years, as of 2008, there have been a ton of cases in which free speech claims are levied successfully against not hate speech, against the sexual harassment claims, which means that all of your arguments on how it's conscious protected are just not true. The dissent. The first argument is that it's constitutionally protected. The Westlake court case from 1999, our evidence postdates that and says it is no longer the case. The second argument is just about what the court does. It is not a question of what Title IX is. Our argument is that Title IX has been revoked from the sort of constitutional jurisprudence, which means that's the bellicose evidence says that it hurts movements on campus. One, that presumes you win your movement's good offense. Two, it's not a question of movements. It is not a question of established movements. It's a question of stopping people from being sexually harassed. Your next argument is that hate speech causes reform. Well, no, being sexually harassed doesn't cause anyone to do anything. It just damages them. Our arguments in the concrete evidence indicates you must challenge sort of the sexual violence that happens in our schools, because it destroys anyone's ability to sort of learn accurately, but also destroys anyone's ability to have collective action. The Benson evidence is straight conceded. It indicates that sexual harassment is caused by patriarchy, not militarism. It means you don't get an internal link argument. And the Chang evidence indicates the diversity, the idea of sort of feminism in the context of militarism, the key to resolving any of the military, which means the dissad turns the case on a sort of militarism level. You cannot go for some sort of grandstanding 2AR, but we resolve militarism, because the dissad proves that it is a requirement that we first address sexual harassment before we can do anything else.
Right, sort of right. That should be time. I'm not reading anything new, so the order is going to go, yeah, hopefully not. The order is going to go case, counterplan, and then design.
Which counterplan?
The first time. Timeline. Is everybody good? Okay. Overread a case a massive outburst of great power warfare that terminates in nuclear conflicts coming within the next few years. The U.S. seeks to shore up its hegemon status. That's the SW evidence. A massive counter movement is now underway. It's bigger than the Vietnam protest. That's Avasi evidence, but it's missing the vital link. Now, the warrant behind why universities, especially the key, is pretty fantastic. The Harding and Kirshner evidence seems to indicate that universities are the birthplace of intellectual radical movements, which are key to which are uniquely key to stopping the spread of militarism because it promotes a space of radical thought. But universities are cracking down to destroy the counter movement and destroy global resistance. That's our Elmer evidence. The plan protects student moving and allowing to stop this wave of militarism or extinction. Now, a couple of framing arguments the case made. First of all, is only all of his arguments. The only argument he tends to show us is new spillover argument, but that's a question of why exactly it happens now. Our uniqueness evidence indicates that it is used in ways that the disciplinary apparatus restricts free speech on campuses, i.e. things like free speech zones is exactly what prevents things from like new spillover from occurring. It's just a question of tracking people into complacency, because when we confine space of dissent onto finite spaces like free speech zones on universities, is more easily controllable, which is exactly how the disciplinary apparatus and the military hegemon tries to quash political dissent, which means that his uniqueness clearly flows our way, because our argument is that the concession of the uniqueness evidence is top one is going to answer back almost every turn on the case. It is carded evidence, which means that you should prefer now his next argument is the index, the Oliver evidence, which indicates that we only legitimate dominant viewpoints. The Oliver evidence is fantastic on this question. It literally cites the questions like, yes, things like the law or things like laws that promote free speech zones are uniquely used to suppress dissent, which means that the failure to respond to the Oliver evidence literally proves our uniqueness true. It's just a question of the things like the military apparatus, the laws that they pass to squash dissent are now extending onto the universities, which is where we ground the thesis of the affirmative. And his final argument is that only the government only allows a certain amount of speech, which means that it is non-free speech restrictions that frame militarism. But no, once again, the thesis of the app is very simple. The question of it is an extension of the military apparatus, which means that a risk of off and the concession of the uniqueness evidence clearly answers back every single term, which means it's just a question of risk of offense. Now, on the counterplan debate, there's a fundamental misinterpretation of the McClellan evidence. Literally, the point, it doesn't matter if your counterplan is about Title IX or not. It's a question of the permutation is 100% true, because Title VII specifically does not protect speech that creates a hostile environment, which means that the type of harassment and the hate speech that is promoted within the that is framed within the dissent is not constitutionally protected in the world of the affirmative, which means that the permutation is 100% true. It is a question of we can sort of limit the harassment that's presented in the counterplan, because Title VII sort of shields any sort of argument, which is why the dissent does not end up becoming an important part of the debate. Just because he's only response against the McClellan evidence, literally our counterplan is not about Title VII. That is not the argument. It's long call for the evidence after the round. It's a question of if that type of speech and the hate speech and dissent is not constitutionally protected under the world of the affirmative, the reason why the permutation is 100% true, because there's no reason why we cannot ban this type of hate speech enacted by the counterplan, which shields every single argument to this side. It's only last piece of evidence. Literally every turn seems to function the dissent of the permutation.